Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We got some really good news today. First thing I want to say quickly, you can expect my first edition of my postseason NFL mock draft in just a couple of days. Probably sometime next week, we will have our first NFL mock draft. We got a lot to talk about, and we got a lot of prospects to evaluate as we get ready to kick off this offseason content. Now, getting into what you see on the title and the thumbnail, Ben Johnson opts to stay with the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions fans, I know you're sad after the NFC Championship. Who wouldn't be? But you gotta be feeling a little bit happier after the news that you saw today. Ben Johnson passing up some of these other head coaching opportunities. There's only two left. But what this signals off to me, what my mind starts to go to when I say, okay, Ben Johnson staying with the Detroit Lions and another opportunity with his guy in Jared Goff, that's signaling this is a football team who wants to run it back. Now, we're still going to have to see as we talk about some of these other coaching candidates. Will Aaron Glenn stay as the defensive coordinator? But I think when I look at this, I got to say it. When you lose in one of the biggest playoff games like a championship game, especially an NFC championship game, Dan Campbell, he said it. We may not get back to this spot. And that's the brutal, honest, and cold truth. But I think when you have a league like the NFL where nothing is guaranteed, the NFC North is getting better. What the Detroit Lions did is give themselves the best shot. It's all about maximizing the opportunity, and by keeping a guy like Ben Johnson, who's proven, who can relate to his guys, and who can get the best out of his guys offensively, I think you maximize your opportunity to get another crack at this thing. We know the offense, along with Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, we know this offense is going to be back running and humming, and not to mention, this is paired with the stout of the stoutest offensive lines in the NFL, so I really like this, but I want to talk about what is the domino effect? Is we get one of the hottest offensive names off of the NFL coaching carousel. How does this affect Washington, and how does this affect Seattle? Now, I don't think, like I say, there's no guarantees in the NFL. I don't think there was a guarantee that either Washington or Seattle was going to pounce on the opportunity to have Ben Johnson as their head coach. But you got to say, okay, who are the other guys out there? Now, I feel like even for Washington, this is a football team who has a ton of cap space. They're looking at the potential of getting Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Who wouldn't have loved Ben Johnson paired with one of those young offensive quarterbacks along with some talented weapons? When you look at, okay, I got Jaden Daniels, I got McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel. I got a lot of guys that I can throw the football to, and not to mention we got some of those guys in the backfield, a la Brian Robinson Jr. I think that would have been a prime time spot for Ben Johnson. But you say, okay, he's staying with his team. You got to look at some of these other candidates. Bill Belichick, he's still a guy out there, and I think we're cooling down on Bill Belichick picking up another NFL head coaching job this year. And you probably say, okay, does he want too much control in the front office? Does he want to be the head coach, but also the GM drafting some of his personnel? I think when we look at some of these other guys, Brian Johnson, former Eagles offensive coordinator. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles, they did something a little different. They brought in Kellen Moore, and then on the defensive side of the football, they brought in Vic Fangio. But I think when you look at a guy like this, even though it's controversial, and some may say he led to the regression of a guy like Jalen Hurts, but still another guy who's out there on the market. Dan Quinn, I think a primetime guy who I would like to see possibly for the Seattle Seahawks. What would a reunion be? The guy who coached the Legion of Boom coming back to this team, get him a good offensive coordinator. Now you got JSN. Now you got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Geno Smith. You could even draft a quarterback, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy. Couple of things that should start to let your mind rumble too. Lou Anarumo, Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator. Bobby Slowick, another guy who I've talked about all season. The fabulous job he's done with C.J. Stroud. He's still another guy out there. We're looking at what he was able to do. First-year quarterback. You had Tank Dell before he got hurt. He was exceptional. Nico Collins, he had his breakout season. Devin Singletary stepping up for a sophomore slumping running back in Damian Pierce. Getting into the next guy, Brian Flores. Can we not credit how he turned things around defensively for a Minnesota Vikings team who I thought really was lapsed of talent? Some of those guys on that defense, Ivan Pace Jr., Daniil Hunter, who's probably going to get paid one of the best contracts for defensive ends. I'm looking at all of those things, and I'm accounting for all of those things. Eric Bieniemy, is this a guy who's going to stay in-house? Do the Washington Commanders feel that with his old school style of coaching, could he work with a young quarterback? Or also, could he work with Sam Howell if they choose to go that route, potentially trade down? Now, I think right now, as I look at the NFL draft landscape, I think they'll get Daniels or May, but Eric Bieniemy, still another guy out there. Mike McDonald, hot commodity, and he just had an interview, I believe, with the Washington Commanders. So is that heating up? Mike McDonald to the Washington Commanders. We saw the job he did in the second half versus Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL. He's a hot topic when we talk about defensive-minded guys. And, of course, I think with the leadership that he commands, how he commands a room and how he commanded that football team, those players will vouch for him in Baltimore. That screams to me you could get a good offensive coordinator who can build with the young quarterback. And also Mike Vrabel, Ajiro Evero, and Frank Smith, offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. So you look at that and say, okay, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, he's knocked down a lot of dominoes. It's a big effect when a guy of that caliber and that aura remains with his NFL team in the Detroit Lions. Like I said, I really like the move. It signals for me they're trying to run it back, and I think this is an offense who will be back. Now, defensively, what do you want to do along the edge? What do you want to do along the secondary? There's a lot of pickings out there as we approach free agency in the NFL draft. Nothing is guaranteed again. I'll say it and I'll keep saying it. But when you keep a guy like Ben Johnson in your stadium, in your house, and in your coaching staff and film room, you've maximized your opportunity. Shout out to the Detroit Lions. Shout out Ben Johnson for doing what he did. Thank you guys for watching. As always, we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That's going to do it for today. And now, yeah.